Hello, my dear friends. Welcome to the Fertile Brains, place where poets meet to share their minds. Poetry is a dreamed in the presence of realism, said by Thomas Gaur. Poetry has the power to capture and communicate a message like no other form of poetry art. A poem can speak to important issues touching upon varied aspects of human beings: love, loss, aspiration, inspiration, and so on. When it comes to poet, who is a poet? A poet may be simply described as such, or is a creator or composer who composes oral or written poem, or maybe a performer, you know, to perform his art to the audience. There is a particular line that mentioned by a famous poet, maybe Shelley, who says that in the defense of poetry, poets are unacknowledgeable legislators of world. Well, the poets have the capacity of building the society, influencing and inspiring the masses, by bringing the sociological revolution. Yet, they play a pivotal role in the social development, yet they are, highly unacknowledged, because their impact on society is not directly, reflected, and is also ignorant and society is ignorant of their contribution in terms of social development. In this context, and in the honor of a great poet that we lost this month on August 27, Jayanta Mahapatra, as a tribute, Fertile Brains have come up with a new series titled Poets Talk About Poets, or rather we could put a tagline as Songs of India, in which this program will be focusing on Indian language poets who contributed to the society with their, with their writings. And our esteemed panel members, including Dr. Roopali Sircar, who is a retired professor of Sri Venkateswara College affiliated to Delhi University, will be acting as moderator along with me, and the panel members will be talking about a poet of their choice, particular language of their choice, and each presenter will be allotted 15 minutes. So this is it, the first in the series today. We are beginning with our four panel members, that is Paramita, Dr. Paramita Mukherjee ma'am, Dr. Sreedharan Parokode, Dr. Setaluri Padmavati ma'am, and Mr. Arindam Roy. So now I hand over this mic to Dr. Roopali Sircar, who will ask her to begin the show by giving a little speech and introducing a poet. Thank you.
Thank you, Prasanna, and thank you, dear
I think there's some internet problem.
Oh,
Be speaking about him. I don't think he needs any introduction. When we hear the national anthem, no matter which part of the world we are, there's something that happens to every Indian. One of the very special things about Dr. Paramita Mukherjee Mullick is that she's a scientist. With Chandrayaan reaching the moon and everybody turning very poetic about it, we have science and poetry together. So we have Dr. Paramita Mukherjee Mullick, a scientist, an award-winning poet, an editor, and a literary curator. Her poems have been translated into 41 languages. Paramita promotes peace, global peace, and indigenous poetry, and she participates and includes many poets in the works that she does. I would invite you today to speak of Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore, who is one of the first Asians to win the Nobel Prize for Literature. I'm not going to talk about him because Paramita is going to do that. So I invite Dr. Paramita to talk to us about Gurudev. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Roopali. It's so wonderful to be here in the first of this lovely series that Prasanna and you have started. Before going forward with Rabindranath Tagore, like Roopali said, like everybody knows him as the greatest poet, I would like to just sing two lines of his song as a reverence to him. Prabhu amar, priyo amar, param dhanu he, চিরপথের সঙ্গী আমার চিরজীবন হে. Yes, O God, you are mine. You are my most precious possession. You are my companion in the journey of my life. With Tagore's own words, I too feel that Rabindranath is always with us in our life's journey. Tagore has composed approximately 2,232 songs, and we all know they are called Robindra Shongit. And they're in different ragas, different forms like Baul, Stoppa, Bhatyali, etc. And what do I talk about him? He is the greatest of the poets. He was called Mahakavi, that is the greatest poet of poets. Now he has written numerous poems, and of which, like we know that he received, like Roopali told you, that he received the Nobel Prize for his collection of poems called Gitanjali in the year 1913, which was published in London in the year 1912. Now in Gitanjali, there are 103 poems. Now, these poems were firstly written in Bengali by Gurudev, that is Rabindranath Tagore, and he himself translated these poems into a prose poetry form. And we all know as poets, he was one of the pioneers in bringing verse poetry. He was bringing in verse poetry into the poetry form. Now, I'll tell you a very interesting incident about this Gitanjali. Of course, many of you know, but still it's very interesting. He was carrying the manuscript of Gitanjali. It was a diary, he was carrying, and he was going to London. And those days, they used to travel in ships. So there were many months he was traveling for many months. And this diary got lost. And after 12 days, that diary was found again. So I feel when the universe helps a hardworking and talented person always. So again, that diary was got, and then it got published, and then it's history. So this always reminds me that, hard work has no alternative. The universe helps you. So, and then we move on to, I will love to, like when he is always with us, And we call him Rabindranath Thakur. In Bengali, we call him Rabindranath Thakur. And he has been a part of all our lives. Like, especially we Bengalis, we have been with him always. So I just read out a few lines from one of my poems written about him. And of course, the title is Rabindranath Tagore. Born in a Bengali family, your poems and stories have always been told by my parents to encourage me and show me what is wrong and right, to help me make this world better and bright. You have written about every season. We quote you for every reason. You have expressed every emotion. You have given us immense motivation. Here, although I say born in a Bengali family, but Rabindranath is not only for Bengalis. He is a world poet. He is a world poet. All his songs are, so we call him a world poet, a global poet. Now, all his songs are also poetry, because we know lyrics start from poetry. And now my mother was a Rabindra Sangeet exponent, and she taught me Rabindra Sangeet. And I remember when I was small, 7 years, I learned my first Rabindra Sangeet. And my father had bought a record, we had those round records then, and he bought it of George Bishash, a very famous Rabindra Sangeet exponent. And he played it for me, and I learned it. And it's so funny that the first song I learned was Purano Shei Diner Kotha She Ki Bhola Jaye. That means you can't, and at this age, I remember that song, and I feel it's so relatable that you cannot forget your past or olden days or your childhood. It's like that. Now Rabindranath was not only a song composer and a poet, he was a great educationist. I remember I had done my B.Ed also, and Roopali Di also will know that there are 4 papers of B.Ed, and one paper is about the methodology of Tagore's educational teaching. So he thought about education. He was the first one who brought school education in the open. His Shantiniketan was done on this methodology, that children should be in the open with the trees, under the trees, studying under the trees with the flowers, with the bees. So it was so beautiful. And he believed that education should help an individual to attain complete manhood, so that all his powers may be developed to the fullest extent for his own individual perfection, as well as the perfection of the human society in which he or she is born. He was the first one, like I said, he started Shantiniketan, and he was the first one to bring in the openness, that is the environment, into education. And also to him, development of the senses was as important as development of the intellect. So he therefore gave prominence to music, literature, art, dance, and drama in the daily life of school education. So now when we see school education having all these extracurricular activities, it was his methodology in education which had brought all these into education. Now, Tagore defined education as that which is one with life, and he believed that only education can give us real freedom, freedom of mind, freedom of heart, and freedom of will. And his famous poem, where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where the world has not been broken up into fragments of narrow domestic walls. Into that heaven of freedom, my father, let my country awake. Yes, he did not believe in the world breaking into bits, but believed in globalism. His idea of internationalism is not about global governance, but his philosophy centers around cooperation, understanding, mutual respect, and pursuit of unity of mankind. 100 years ago, Tagore lectured in Japan about the disastrous side of nationalism. He called for more global interconnectedness in place of fragments, unity in place of isolation. Rabindranath Tagore was a painter as well. You must be knowing, all of you. And there is another interesting fact about this. At 60 years of age, he had his first art painting exhibition. And if you see his corrections in his manuscripts, in his poetry or his songs, you will see that he has beautiful drawings. He used to cut it out and make beautiful drawings. And all his paintings was very colorful. But it's so beautiful to think that he was colorblind. Rabindranath was colorblind, but he had spread and brought out so much color in his paintings. There is another fact which I read a few days back in a Bengali paper, which interested me. This has not been publicized much. So it was like, I will not go into the details of this because I only have 5 minutes. So let me go to the end of this. So the Mahakavi, he died at the age of 80 in the year 1941. I have translated some of his Bengali poems in English, and I will just end just reading out one last verse of that, because he believed in giving his best, giving all his passion into his work. So the last stanza is, it came back as, so he had given a king something, like he was a beggar going down the road and he had given the king a little speck of his alms and it came back as gold. So he writes, it came back as gold. My eyes filled up with tears. Why, oh why didn't I give away everything to you? I think Rabindranath had given his all his talent, his intellect for our development, for our going forward. So with my respects to Rabindranath once more, I end my talk here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Paramita. I mean, so what a wonderful presentation. And I just love those beautiful lines in Bengali, in Bangla that you sang. You know, you have such a wonderful voice. And thank you for being here with us today. You come back again. Tell us more.
Okay. Thank you, Paramita ma'am. Thank you, Roopali ma'am. Thank you for beginning the program and talking about Rabindranath Tagore. Let me take the opportunity of inviting Mr. Sreedharan Parokode. He's an award-winning bilingual poet, critic, and research scholar. Writes in English and Malayalam. He's a personality. He writes for children and theater and films, both in Malayalam and English. And Mother has been translated in many languages. Yeah, his poem. So I kindly invite Sreedharan Parokode to say a few words about the poet, a Malayalam poet, is known to be as Akkitam. Akkitam Achyutan Nambudri. He's a great poet from Malayalam, and he's from Palakkad, and he's also been awarded Jnanpith Puraskaram in 2019, and he passed away in 2020. So please, I would request Sreedharan Parokode sir to say a few more things about him. Thank you, sir. Sreedharan Parokode.
Okay. First of all, let me congratulate Dr. Roopali Madam and Prasannaji for conducting such a nice program here, because the title of the program is Poet Talks About Poet. It's very, very nice. And I can say about poet Akkitam's poems. Akkitam is the name he received. Akkitam Achyutan Nambudiri. was Akkitam Namburi and popularly known as Akkitam. He got Jnanpith Award in 2019. And what I can say without saying one, two or three lines from him. Yes. Network is no any problem? No, okay. ഒരു കണ്ണീർ കണം മറ്റുള്ളവർക്കായി ഞാൻ പൊഴിക്കവേ ഉദിക്കയാണെൻ ആത്മാവിൽ ആയിരം സൗരമണ്ഡലം ഒരു പുഞ്ചിരി ഞാൻ മറ്റുള്ളവർക്കായി ചെലവാക്കവേ ഹൃദയത്തിലുലാവുന്നു നിത്യ നിർമ്മല പൗർണമി. If I spend 1 or 2 tears for others, if I feel the other man as myself, what can I say? He is an advocate of love. Akkitam was an advocate of love and compassionate love. His slogan was that. And that's why he said that ഒരു കണ്ണീർ കണം ഞാൻ മറ്റുള്ളവർക്കായി പൊഴിക്കവേ ഉദിക്കയാണ് ആത്മാവിൽ ആയിരം സൗരമണ്ഡലം means Saura means Suryan, sun, and thousands of suns rays are there with me when I say so. And Akkitam has written about 70 books, including the Sri Mahabhagavatam. And he got Kerala Sahitya Akademi Award, Kendra Sahitya Akademi Award, Guruvayurappan Puraskaram, Amritakirti Puraskaram, Vallatol Award, Sanjayan Award, Lalitambika Antarjana Award, Ullur Award, Eduthachen Puraskaram, Asan Prize, and Jnanapith Puraskaram in 2019. Akkitam is, and I have, yes, this book is dedicated to Akkitam, and I am a contributor to this. And when I called him, we were reciting his poems at his residence, Akkitam's residence in Kumaranellur near Edappal in Palakkad district. Then we invited him for poetry programs there, and at that particular days, he told us that what is the way to write, how a poet should write, and what is the way he choose. And he has a good vision about that. And we can say that as Francis Bacon said, some books are to be tasted, others to be swallowed, and some, or like that, Akkitam has a true vision about poetry. And he says that Velicham Dukhamanunni Tamasalo Sukapradam. Velicham Dukhamanunni. Velicham is light. Light is a cause of misery. Why he said that? If it is dark, we cannot see the reality. Nirathil Kaka Kottunnu Chatta Penninte Kannugal. When we cross the road, main road, we can see that the eyes are taken by the crows, the birds from a dead body of that woman. And at the same time, the baby is sucking her breast milk. Nirathil Kaka Kottunnu Chatta Penninte Kannugal Mula Chappi Valikkunnu Naravamsha Navadidi. Naravamsha Navadidi means Naravarga Navadidi means a guest, a baby. Baby is doing that. And he says about the harsh reality of life. We can say that. And when idam na mama, he always say that idam na mama, it is not mine, it's not mine. The children approached him to take some things from him, and seeing the elephant with him, he told at that time that it is not mine. Idam na mama, it is not mine. Endayal Kombanagal. Kombanana means elephants. Endayalli Kombananagal. Endayalli Mahakshetravum Makale. Garbhagrahatilunda Srida Valsalya Nirbharana Yoral. Endaya. Because these all things are not belonging to me. But there is a person, there is somebody in that temple, and I ought to, and these all things are not mine, not mine. Don't approach me, please. And he tells always to the children, these elephants are not mine. So go there. And I can say that Akkitam's views on poem or poetry was, why one writes poetry? Because to express his ideas, at the very same time to share the emotions and how we can collect the emotions and how we can share the emotions. He has given us the very ideas about that. And at the very particular moment, we can say that Akkitam's main books are titled as Veeravadam, Valakilukam, Madhuvidu, Panchavarna Kiligal, Manoratham, Arangetam, Anachurande Ganam, Sanjarigal, Vennakalinde Katha, Idinyo Pudinja Logam, Nimisha Chetram, Manasapuja, Akkitathinte Terenjedutthakal, and so forth. Because he has many things to say, and he is an ardent supporter of Vasudhaiva Kudumbakam. Vasudhaiva Kudumbakam means he says that all world is one family, and he says that, and he cannot separate or segregate or to take the persons in other sense in the pursuit, in the journey with the poems. He says many more things that are coexistence with cooperation, he says always. And at the world, he has a world of words, the suitable words, apt words, and what are to be eliminated. He knows it very well. And likewise, he says that Irul Pazhakkathil Manushya-vamsham Velichamendennu Marannu Poyo. Irul Pazhakkathil. If we experience darkness, we forget the light also. Irul Pazhakkathil Manushya-vamsham Velichamendennu Marannu Poyo. He says that often. കാഴ്ചകൾ കാണാൻ പോകുന്നവരെ കാര്യം നമ്മൾ പറഞ്ഞേക്കാം. കാഴ്ചകൾ കാണാൻ പോകുന്നവരെ means if you are going to see the things there, കാണണമെന്നു വിചാരിക്കുന്നതു കാണാൻ ചെന്നാൽ കാണില്ല. കാണണമെന്നു വിചാരിക്കുന്നതു കാണാൻ ചെന്നാൽ കാണില്ല. If you want to see something particular, that will not be available there. That will not be available there because Kadaluga Kanan Poyitin. When I went for seeing the sea, I could not see the sea, but only waves are there. So Kalchaga Kanan Pogunavare Karyam Namal Paranekam. If you want to see something, it may not be possible. It may not be possible. So, Karnandariyo. So, Kuppachandigal Kotittinan Puruginada Kumaripra. He says to the bird, tiny bird, Prav in Malayalam, it is said Prav. That Kuppachandigal Kotittinan Puruginada Kumariprave Nala Varamo Nyangada Vitil. Would you come tomorrow to my house? So he invites the bird. Prav, Ariprav, he says so. I cannot. So time is up, I think. So Akkitam, let me conclude now. Akkitam says very firmly that Manushanamende Manorathatino Manushya Muktiye Manotnyamam Lechyam. My aim, my sole aim is that Manushya Mukti, but Mojanam, liberation. So he is an ardent supporter of Manushatvam, humanity. Akkitam says always about Manushatvam. Let me conclude now, and I can say that idam na mama, idam na mama. He says so. So nirupadhyamam sneham, about unconditional love. He says of unconditional love. Nirupadhyamam sneham balamai varum kramal idana araga ide satyam idushilika dharmavum idushilika dharmavum. He says that. Let me conclude now. Okay, thank you for the wonderful opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sreedharan sir. Thank you for talking about a few words about Akkitam Mahapatra, a great poet, is from Malayalam, Kerala. And now let me take the opportunity of handing over to Roopali Sircar ma'am, who will be introducing Setaluri, Miss Setaluri Padmavati ma'am. Over to you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And before I introduce our poet, I would like to thank our poet Parokode, Sreedharan Parokode. You have introduced us today to one of the great poets in Malayalam. And this particular series that Prasanna has actually initiated is one to make us know about the songs that have been sung in this country by great poets in other regional languages. And I'm really overwhelmed, I'm very touched that I am coming to know about poets I had never even known about at all, read about. But Akkitam, of course, is Jnanpith Award winner. He's a social worker. He has written about, and all the poets who are going to be here this evening, who we are talking about, are people who have contributed greatly to this nation, and that's why we call it Songs of India. Now I introduced you to our Telugu poet Setaluri Padmavati, who is a creative artist, poet, and writer, and well-known educator. Widely published, she's a bilingual poet. This evening, she will introduce us to the great philosopher, Telugu poet, Vemana Vemagiri Kumara Reddy, popularly known as Vemana. A popular Telugu saying goes that Vemana's word is the word of the Vedas. He is celebrated for his style of Chatu Padyam, a poem with a hidden meaning. I was reading about it, there's 3 lines, and the 4th line would reveal something. And his poems are translated by C.P. Brown, a British writer. I invite Dr. Setaluri Padmavati to tell us of this great poet of India. Most welcome.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for introduction. Good evening, everyone. I hope I am audible. Yeah. Thanks for the great opportunity, Roopali ma'am and Mr. Prasanna. I'm very happy to share the stage with all the eminent poets of India. Telugu jati bhavana mana Vemana. అల్పాక్షరముల ననల్పార్థ రచన కావించుటయుగదే కవి వివేకంబు పాల్కురికి సోమన కవి. ఈ సోమన కవి చెప్తాడు, చాలా తక్కువ పదాలతోటి ఒక అర్థవంతమైన పద్యాన్ని రాయడమే ఒక కవి యొక్క చాతుర్యం అనేసి ఆయన చెప్తాడనమాట. వేమన వచ్చేసి రెడ్డి కులానికి చెందినవాడని చాలా మంది అభిప్రాయపడతారు. అంతకుముందు ఆయన ఏదో కులానికి చెందినవాడని చాలా మంది భావించారు. కానీ యాక్చువల్ గా తర్వాత చాలా మంది అనుకున్నారు ఆయన రెడ్డి కులానికి, రెడ్డి వంశానికి చెందినవాడని. రకరకాల అభిప్రాయాలు ఉన్నాయి మనుషుల్లో, ఎప్పుడు జన్మించాడని, ఏ సంవత్సరంలో ఏ సెంచరీలో జన్మించాడు అనేసి. తర్వాత మనుషులు అందరూ కూడా నమ్మారు 1540 1700 మధ్యకాలంలో ఆయన జీవించాడని అందరూ అంటారు. కొండవీడు అనే ప్రాంతంలో నివసించాడని, లేదా మూగ చింతపల్లి అనేది ఇప్పుడు ప్రస్తుతం చిత్తూరు అనే ప్లేస్ లో ఉంది, అక్కడ జీవించాడనేసి అందరూ అంటారు. ఆయన తండ్రి పేరు రెడ్డన్న, తల్లి పేరు మనకు తెలియదు అన్నమాట. యాక్చువల్ గా ఆయన స్త్రీలోలుడు. తర్వాత కొద్ది కాలానికి ఆయన యోగిగా మారి రాయలసీమ అంతా తిరిగి దేశాన్నంతా సంచారం చేసి ఆయన యొక్క స్వానుభవాలు తర్వాత ఆయన అనుభవించిన జీవనకాల పరిస్థితులు వాటన్నిటిని కూడా పద్య రూపంలో ఆయన రాశాడనమాట. కేంద్ర ప్రభుత్వం ఆయన 300 సంవత్సరాల క్రితం వాడని నమ్మేసి ఆయన పేరు మీద ఒక తపాలా బిళ్ళని ఇది డిస్కవర్ చేసిందనమాట. సో యాక్చువల్ గా ఈయన రాసిన పద్యాలని శతకం అంటారు. శతకం అంటే 100 పద్యాలు. సో ఈ శతకాలు అనేవి తెలుగు ప్రక్రియ సాహిత్య ప్రక్రియల్లో ఒకటి. ఇది సంస్కృతం నుంచి తెచ్చుకున్న సాహిత్య ప్రక్రియల్లో ఇది శతకం అనేది ఒకటి అన్నమాట. శతకం అంటే 100 పద్యాలు. ఐ వుడ్ బి ట్రాన్స్లేటింగ్ ఇట్ బ్రీఫ్లీ ఇన్ ఇంగ్లీష్ ఆల్సో లేటర్. ఓకే, ఏ పద్యానికి ఆ పద్యం విడిగా ఉంటాయి. ప్రతి పద్యానికి ఒక రకమైన అర్థం అనేది ఉంటుంది, కానీ ఒకే ఒక సూత్రంతో ఆయన రాశాడన్నమాట. నేను ముందుగా చెప్పినట్టుగా ఆయన అనుభవాలన్నీ కూడా సరళమైన రీతిలో అందరికీ అర్థమయ్యేటట్టుకు శక్తివంతమైన పద్యాల్ని ఆయన రాశాడు. అన్ని పద్యాలు కూడా 4 లైన్లు ఉంటాయన్నమాట. దాన్ని ఏమంటారంటే మొదటి వరుస, రెండో వరుస, అట్లా 4 వరుసలు ఉంటాయి. ఆయన రాసిన 4వ వరుసలో విశ్వదాభిరామ వినురవేమ అనే లైన్ ప్రతి పోయంలో ఉంటుందన్నమాట. దాన్ని ఏమంటామంటే మకుటం అంటారు. మకుటం అంటే అసలు దాని మీనింగ్ వచ్చేసి కిరీటం అన్నమాట. రాజుకి కిరీటం లేకపోతే మనం రాజుని గౌరవించము రాజుగా. అలాగే ఈ మకుటం అనేది చాలా ప్రాముఖ్యత చెందిందనమాట ఆయన లైన్లలో. ఆయన పద్యాలు చదవడానికి కానీ తర్వాత అర్థం చేసుకోవటానికి కూడా చాలా సరళ రీతిలో ఉంటాయి. తర్వాత ఈ శతకాలు కన్నడలో కూడా రాశారు, కానీ అంత ప్రాచుర్యంలోకి రాలేదు. ఈవెన్ తమిళం, మలయాళంలో చాలా తక్కువగా మనకి అవి కనిపిస్తూ ఉంటాయి అన్నమాట. సో వీటికి కొన్ని నియమాలు ఉంటాయి. సంఖ్యా నియమం, ఛందస్ నియమము, తర్వాత ఈ మకుట నియమం అనేసి, తర్వాత రస నియమం అనేసి కొన్ని రూల్స్ ఉంటాయి అన్నమాట. వాటిని ఫాలో చేస్తూ పాడతారు. యాక్చువల్గా ఈ విశ్వదాభిరామ వినురవేమాని ఎందుకు పెట్టారు అనేది నేను జస్ట్ మీనింగ్ చెప్తాను మీకు. యాక్చువల్గా ఈయనకి విశ్వద అనే ఒక ప్రేయసి ఉందని ఒక నానుడి. తర్వాత అభిరామయ్య అనే అతను ఆయనకి కంసాలి పని నేర్పించాడనేసి అందరూ చెప్తారు. విశ్వద అంటే ఏంటంటే ప్రపంచాన్ని మనకి ఇచ్చేవాడు ఆయన భగవంతుడు. సో ఇవన్నీ కూడా పెట్టుకొని వినుర అంటే విను అని అర్థం. వేమ అనేది ఆయన పేరు కాబట్టి వినుర వేమ అలా వచ్చిందనమాట. విశ్వదాభిరామ వినురవేమ అనేసి. తర్వాత ఆయనని యోగిగానే అందరూ అనుకున్నారు. ఒక గొప్ప కవిగా ఆయనకు పెద్దగా ప్రఖ్యాతమైన పేర్లు కానీ ఏమీ కూడా అప్పట్లో రాలేదన్నమాట. ఆయన రాసిన పద్యాలన్నీ కూడా నీతిని వెలుగుచ్చుతాయి, మోరల్ వాల్యూస్ అన్ని కూడా ఇస్తాయన్నమాట. అది హృదయానికి హత్తుకునేటట్లు చాలా ఏమంటారంటే మంచి శక్తివంతమైన పదాలని వాడి పవర్ఫుల్ పోయిమ్స్ అన్ని కూడా ఆయన రాశాడు అనమాట. సో సిపి బ్రౌన్ అనే అతను ఆయన యొక్క పద్యాలని సేకరించి ఒక బుక్ లో ఆయన పబ్లిష్ చేసింది ఎప్పుడంటే 1829. So the same thing I'll just briefly tell you all in English. Vemana belongs to the caste called Reddy caste. He lived in Kondaveedu and in Chittoor district. So the name of the place is called Mugachintapalli. His teacher was Somashekara and father was Reddanna. We don't know his mother, who she was. He was known as a womanizer. People called him as a woman. He loved many women. So after that, he became yogi after some days, and he wandered so many places in India and also Rayalaseema. This is a region in Andhra Pradesh. So while he was traveling to the places, whatever experiences he had, he wrote. He told all his experiences through his poems, and the way he wrote poems were very easy to understand and very powerful. Within a few words, he wrote, so many things. So even a small children can understand the moral values through this poem. That is what his main intention to write this poem. So he wrote shatakams. They are called 100 poems, and every poem has its own different meaning. And the end of the line ends with Vishwadabhirama Vinuravema. People say that he had a lover called Vishwada. Okay, Vishwada. Then Abhiram, a person who taught him, the work of goldsmith, it seems, like how to make jewelry and all. And that is one thing. Actually, Vishwada, the word Vishwada's meaning is that it is something that a giver of the world to us. That is who? Only the Almighty. So Vinura means that is called you listen to me. So Vema is named Vemana. That is how the line ends with Vishwadabhirama Vinurvema. It is nothing but listen to me what I'm speaking. That's the meaning here. So I told you all these things. These Shatakas were there in Kannada, like Tamil and Malayalam also, but they did not become so famous as they became in Telugu. That is the thing. And he followed different rules when he wrote these poems. And the last line is called Makutam, as I told you that it's like a crown, and it was a very famous line it was. I think I have explained all these things. And as a yogi, he discovered many things. He had experiences, and he, shared his values and the life lessons, and also whatever he felt about the world and the people. And he taught the people, through his very short poems. They were very short, but they were very powerful poems, which are very easily understandable. I mean, people can understand them very easily. That is what it is about him. Yeah, I'll read a few poems written by him. Maybe you may like them, and I will also explain to you the meaning in English. Yeah, thank you, Prasannaji. Yeah, I'll finish it within the time. A few poems I'm going to read for all of you, written by Vemana. గంగె గోవు పాలు గరిటెడైనను చాలు కడివెడైననేమి కరము పాలు భక్తి కలుగు కూడు పట్టెడైనను చాలు విశ్వదాభిరామ వినురవేమ. కడివెడు గాడిద పాల కంటే గరిటెడు ఆవు పాలు మేలుని కలిగిస్తుంది. భక్తితో పెట్టిన కూడు పట్టెడు అయినప్పటికీ తృప్తిని కలిగిస్తుంది. He says that so even the cow's milk is very very much usable in our families or houses, whatever it is. If you want to make sweets, you can use even little cow's milk is enough, but the donkey's milk cannot be used. That is what he says. And he also says that whatever food you are eating, which is given with devotion or some respect or something, that a person can become a very humble person and very devotional, and he gets some satisfaction, when he had that type of food. Next one. Puja kanna ninsa buddhi nidanambu mata kanna ninsa manasu drudhamu కులము కన్న మెగుల గుణము ప్రధానంబు విశ్వదాభిరామ వినురవేమ. He says that it's better to have good attitude and good mind rather than doing these pujas. That is what he says. If your mind is pure and good, and that is most important than going to different temples and performing all different types of the rituals whatever we do in our country. And he also says that mata kante manasu pradhanam kulamu kante gunam pradhanam. He says that your mind is more important than your word, how you speak to the people, the words which come from your heart, they are so important. And he says that the quality, the attitude of a person is more important than the caste in the country. Yeah, next one. మిరపగింజ చూడ మీద నల్లగనుండు కొరికి చూడులోన చురుకుమనును సజ్జనలుగునారి సారమేట్లుండురా విశ్వదాభిరామ వినురవేమ. మిరప గింజ చూడ మీద నల్లగనుండు. మిరియపు గింజ, the pepper seeds, they look very black in color, but when you taste them you feel a kind of sharpened taste. In the same way, a person may look different outside, but inside, if you observe him, if you understand him, then only you will come to know about his attitude and his good heart, whatever you call. That's the meaning here. మిరియపు గింజ మీద నల్లగా ఉన్నప్పటికీ దాన్ని కొరికిన వెంటనే చురుక్కుమంటుంది. మంచివారు పైకి ఏ విధంగా కనిపించినప్పటికీ అతనిని జాగ్రత్తగా గమనించో అసలు విషయం బయటపడుతుంది. సమ్ టైమ్స్ వి ఫీల్ సమ్ పీపుల్ హూ ఆర్ అరౌండ్ అస్, immediately we start believing them and we feel, oh, they are very good, they are very friendly. But very keenly, if you observe them, then only you will know whether they are good or not. That's what he says. Yeah, maybe can I read one more poem? Yeah, last one. అనగననగరాగ మతిశయల్లుచునుండు తినగ తినగవేము తీయనుండు సాధనమున పనులు సమకూరు ధరలోన విశ్వదాభిరామ వినురవేమ. తరచుగా పాడుచుండిన కంఠధ్వని మాధుర్యంగా ఉండును. ప్రతిదినము తినుచుండిన వేప వేలైనను తీయగా ఉండును. ప్రయత్నం చేయచుండిన పనులు నెరవేరును. ఈ ప్రపంచమున పద్ధతులు ఈ విధముగా ఉండును. సో ఇట్స్ a beautiful example he gave us that. So if you want to become a great singer or a good singer, daily you need to practice, then your voice will become very melodious and sweet. So whatever it is, you need to practice every day. So because of practice, you will become successful. Even if you want to eat the neem leaves every day, gradually if you are eating them and one day you feel even neem leaves, you feel them, they are very sweet. So that is what example he gave us. Yeah, this is what the world, and this is how the life goes on, and how people live, and how people can recognize others, and how we can learn the lessons. So that is what about Vemana. Yeah, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Roopali ma'am.
You're one of the, yes, you have introduced us to one of the great poets of Andhra Pradesh. And the fact that his life's journey has been very different, and how his poems have got into the lives of children. They're used in everyday language, everything. And thank you, Prasanna, because your program has put me back into reading, to knowing. And I'm very emotional at this moment, because to be in touch with the poets of this country is perhaps the most beautiful thing that can happen to us. Thank you so much. We'll wait for our next poet.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Roopali ma'am. Thank you, Setaluri, Padma, ma'am.
Thank you, Roopali ma'am, and thank you, Prasanna.
Vishwada Abhirama. Thank you, ma'am. Beautiful presentation. And that was Setaluri Padmavati ma'am who talked about Telugu poet, a well-known Telugu poet, Vemana. Now let me take the opportunity of welcoming poet, author, editor, novelist, Mr. Arindam Roy, who is a founder of and editor-in-chief of Different Truths, renowned e-journal. He is a managing director at Kavikum Publishing Consultant, KKPC. He has been a journalist and has co-written 10 chapters in 6 national and international coffee table books. Authored 4 time groups, CTVs, and published 5 international poetry anthologies. With 3 more in progress, we invite him on behalf of Fetal Brains to speak on Shri Jayanta Mahapatra, whose recent demise has left Indian English poetry scene in vacuum. I welcome Arindam Roy sir to say a few words about Jayanta Mahapatra. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Prasanna. Am I audible? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Prasanna. Thank you, Roopali. And I see a lot of friends here, Paramita, Sreedharan, and Setaluri. I got to know you now. I'll be speaking on Jayanta Mahapatra, who left us just a few days back. So without sort of going any further or anything, I'll straight away start reading. Landscapes and myths of Jayanta Mahapatra's poetry. This is what I'm trying to speak on. Jayanta Mahapatra, October 22, 1928, to August 27, 2023, a renowned Odia poet and a former physics teacher left an indelible impact on Indian literature with his evocative poetry that frequently explored themes of destitution, poverty, and human condition. What are the various aspects of human conditions? His unique ability to combine scientific precision with poetic sensitivity and an infantile innocence in his exploration of life's complexities earned him a unique place in the literary world. I examine the influences that influenced Jayanta's poetic sensibilities and how he channeled his experiences into a body of work that continues to resonate with contemporary readers. As we know, he was born on October 22, 1928 in Cuttack, Odisha, and his early existence was marked by financial difficulties. He earned a bachelor's degree in physics from Ravenshaw College and then pursued a career as a professor. During these years, his poetic journey started to take shape. His poems, which were profoundly influenced by the harsh realities of poverty and destitution he witnessed around him, became an outlet for him to express his thoughts, emotions, and reflections. Childlike innocence is one of his most remarkable aspects of Mahapatra's poetry. His poems conveyed a sense of awe and inquiry, as if he viewed the world through the eyes of a child, despite his penchant for tackling gloomy topics. This purity gave his work a unique perspective, allowing readers to investigate intricate themes from a fresh and unencumbered perspective. It also made his poetry accessible to a broad audience, transcending age and background barriers. In the introduction of, quote, from rereading Jayanta Mahapatra 2022 Black Eagle publications, Professor Nandini Sahu wrote, quote, my personal relationship with Sir has evolved over the years from that of a student researcher to that of a daughter. Even he says that I'm his granddaughter, to that almost his mother. Since the past few years, I've treated him as if he were my child. I dote on him, reprimand him when he neglects his health or fails to eat on time, and I protect and adore him. He merely has faith. Before COVID, I recall being scheduled to share the dais with him at a lit fest. Sir was famished, but the majority of his admirers were occupied taking photos with him for social media posting. I asked him to eat before the meeting, but the elaborate Chinese cuisine on the menu was inappropriate for a man of his age. I requested that the event organizers provide fruit salads or straightforward dal rice. However, as anticipated, everyone was too occupied. I departed my session, proceeded to the home of one of my teachers, and obtained a piece of podopita, a confection made of fermented rice, black gram flour with grated coconut. When I arrived, the session had concluded, but he was still seated and famished. When he saw the podopita, he became emotional. He told me while consuming that the cake was his preferred dish. Such a beautiful, personal kind of a experience that Nandini shares with us. And now we come to how poverty and destitution, how we see poverty and destitution in the poetry of Mahapatra. The theme of adversity and destitution recurred frequently in the poetry of Mahapatra. He depicted the marginalized and disadvantaged in evocative and often unsettling detail, spotlighting the struggles and resiliency. The socio-economic disparities that afflicted society were harshly reflected in his works. Through his poetry, he cast light on the brutal realities encountered by the poor, giving them a voice in the literary world. The poems of Mahapatra frequently conveyed a profound sense of empathy and compassion for those living to the margins of society. His ability to empathize with their plight and express it through his poetry rendered his work not only moving, but also socially pertinent. He used his writing to bring attention to issues that were extremely important to him. Here are a few lines from an introduction by Professor Smita Agarwal, well, she happens to be my classmate, in Marginalized Indian Poetry in English, 2014. She states, I quote, Jayanta Mahapatra is no longer writing in English. He has embraced his mother tongue Odia to express his feelings, that he is emotionally sensitive, as well as a quintessentially romantic poet. I can testify at a conference in Navi Mumbai in 2008, while addressing a school hall packed with children who were gazing at him with adoration, Mahapatra broke down and sobbed at the mic while describing the numbing effects of poverty in rural Odisha. In his recent article, The Master of Imagery and Empathy Passes Away, Kesom blog, Dr. Satyanarayan Mishra opined, quote, social reality and depicting its interiors is one of Jayanta Mahapatra's central theme. He bemoaned the poets who wrote about metropolitan India while ignoring the plight of rural India. In the poem Dusk, he penned, I quote, as in film, freedom's stock is limited, a lack of want, social justice, positioned above the wreathing heartland, and in the noises of nude souls on the ground, the sloped hamlet route, hunger is in the air, a fact that will anger the heavens, unquote. He goes on to say, he was truly concerned about the harsh reality of acute poverty and social injustice in rural India. In this aspect, he has a close parallel with the filmmaker Mrinal Sen, who made Akale Shandhane, depicting how rural life has not changed much from the time when Bengal famine struck. Later, Mishra adds, I quote, his poems Indian Summer and Hope are considered classics in modern English literature. Taste of Tomorrow, Hunger, and Relationship won him enormous accolades. The oppressive claustrophobic, with its depth, disease and decay, beggars and poverty, pervade his work. Two important qualities of his work, however, stand out. One is his innate humanitarianism, his empathy for the underdog, violence, oppression, poverty, among others, and the other is his metaphorical imagination, which is highly developed and extremely fertile. Here is a sample of the unique use of imagery. I quote, at Puri, the crows, the one wide street rolls out like a giant tongue as a priest passes by. How beautiful is that? Relationship, a major work of his, uses the Konarak Sun Temple as a focus for the exploration of the Odissan past. Sorrow and losses reassembled. I quote Nabina Das, a prominent poet herself, who wrote in scroll.in, the article was Rivers, Nostalgia and Solitude, poet Jayanta Mahapatra's Essential Art at 94, May 20, 2023. Quote, The twin rivers of Mahanadi and Kathajodi that embrace poet Jayanta Mahapatra's hometown Cuttack constitute a motif that he lives by every day. In the dusty Odisha towns of Cuttack and Puri and the bylanes of memory and activity, the poet proliferates with his crows, bamboos, grooves of shedding leaves, cries of hawkers, and life moving along the ghats of grace and repose. A man does not mean anything but the place sitting on the riverbank, throwing pebbles into the muddy current. A man becomes a place. These few lines are for his poem, A Rain of Rights. The arc of rivers that entwine Cuttack, its delta, and the bustling human life of 1,000 years, in particular, the pervasion of cohesion and amalgamation of senses for Mahapatra. The sorrow or losses are reassembled into his own thirst for a seamless world of justice. There are a few lines from a poem called Freedom, which I'm skipping. Mahapatra and the Freedom Movement. Dr. Mishra states, in 1942, at the age of 14, Jayanta enrolled at Reverend Shah College to pursue science and physics. The college's history is synonymous with the history of modern Orissa. It was founded in 1868. It pulsated with carefully planned out tennis court and placid and passionate cannons positioned before the portico. This year was the year that World War II reached its climax, and on August 9, 1942, Gandhi issued Quit India call. Slowly and inexorably, Jayanta was drawn into the movement. In his commemorative volume titled Revenchavian 2009, he writes, I quote, I recall the mute murmurs of the verdant lawns and the smiles of our professors, which never failed to reflect the harsh light of knowledge. My heart resembled in part the air-raid shelter, the dark and dreary subterranean chamber, a place where the footfall of my youth shuddered at its edge, and then the green wings and flew away into the sky. Unquote. At the crossroads of science and poetry. As a physics instructor, Mahapatra imbued his poetry with scientific precision, juxtaposing the rigors of science with the emotional world of art. His poems were intellectually stimulating and emotionally resonant due to his unique combination. His scientific background enabled him, before exploring the complexities of human existence and the natural world with a keen eye, thereby enhancing the meaning of his verses. Dr. Mishra mentions he was once asked about the relationship between background in science and opting to write poetry. Jayanta replied, quote, I suppose that the study of physics taught me a certain discipline to write concisely, not to use unnecessary words in a poem, unquote. In our web journal, Different Truths, Jayanta Mahapatra, Life in Poetry, 1928 to 2023, August 27, 2023, Urna Bose, who interviewed him, wrote, I quote, a small niggling doubt has often crossed my mind. Is it best to keep our heroes at a distance, worship the writers and the poets we admire from far, far away, safely seated as they are on that gilded pedestal, carefully constructed for them in our heads and our hearts? And what happens if we interact with them on a personal level someday? See them for the human being they really are? Would these diamond-encrusted images splinter and crack a bit? And how do we cushion our worshippers' expectations? I'm curtailing the quote here. It was a beautiful interview. If you can, please go to Different Truths and read this. Mahapatra's poetry is often intimate and thoughtful. It delves into his personal recollections and experience, as well as wider historical and cultural topics. His poems are generally marked by loss and desire, yet they often include moments of beauty and optimism. Anupama Raju, in a tribute to Mahapatra, wrote in scroll.in, quote, death in an early preoccupation and recurring theme, even in Jayanta's younger days. In False Start, 1980, we have a poem, Ash, in which we find, quote, the substance that stirs in my palm could well be a dead man, unquote. The death of his father, mother, wife, daughter over the years has irrevocably played a role in this preoccupation. In measuring death, we are left with a haunting image. He says, death is a handcart you push. Though day full of moonlight, a sadness you can't trust. His will and death. I paraphrase a report, rather two reports, in New Indian Express. It stated that the Padma Shri awardee Mahapatra defied his Christian faith and chose cremation over burial in his will. The funeral was conducted in accordance with the poet's wish, said Cuttack Mayor Subhash Singh, who also emphasized that Mahapatra's passing was a significant loss not only for Orissa or India, but for the entire literary community. In his will, Mahapatra made a generous gesture to J. Sarojini, who had faithfully served his family for 35 years. Although Mahapatra's wife and son had passed away before him, his daughter-in-law and grandchildren resided in Singapore. Mahapatra also requested that his letters, typescripts, and unfinished manuscripts be burned after his demise. In his later years, Mahapatra was only accompanied by his extensive collection of books and J. Sarojini, his devoted caretaker, for over 5 decades. Sarojini joined the Mahapatra household when she was just 18, quickly becoming an integral part of the family. Mahapatra affectionately referred to her as his daughter and even had a house built for her behind his own. When Sarojini passed away in December last year, her son J. Isaac, also known as Jeju, and daughter-in-law J. Sandhya, assumed the responsibility of caring for Mahapatra until his last moments. Dev Prakash Das, a close friend, explained, quote, for a long time, Sarojini took care of the family, and she continued to do so even after his wife's passing. He grew lonely after her demise, and since his son and daughter-in-law were living in Singapore. Later, Sarojini began to suffer from knee pain, affecting her mobility, but continued to look after him. Eventually, her son Jeju married Sandhya, and the couple began taking care as Sarojini's health deteriorated. Now, there's this whole thing about whether Mahapatra was lonely or not, and a report says that they left it to us because sometimes he says that, poets can never be lonely because they inherit the world, they draw the world into them. But he also mentions that the past is a constant presence, while the future only peeks around the corner. This shows that he was often troubled by recollection of his loved ones who had died. Did Mahapatra experience loneliness? Each person must answer it for himself or herself. There is the little question, however, that he was an individual who was greatly impacted by loss and sought consolation in the work. I close with a poem of Jayanta Mahapatra published in Different Truths. This was the last poem which Purna chose and we published, a missing person. In the darkened room, a woman cannot find a reflection in the mirror, waiting as usual at the edge of sleep. In her hands, she holds the oil lamp whose drunken yellow flames know where her lonely body hides. So that's all. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, sir. It's really a befitting tribute to Mahapatra. We came to know about amazing facts about him, and towards the end of his life, too. Thank you for your valuable time. We got to listen to and know about 4 language poets. One is Rabindranath Tagore, one is Akkitam, second and third one is Vemana, and third. And Mahapatra, Jayanta Mahapatra. More, I now would like to hand over mic to Dr. Roopali Sircar ma'am to end this, have a note. Thank
We
you.
don't want to end it. It's been such a beautiful evening, and thank you, Arindam Roy, for your wonderful presentation. As a teacher, I taught Mahapatra many times, almost of his poems, and I found that there was a sense of history that was there in his poetry. Especially, when he talks about his grandfather and how, and I think there's so much to learn because there was a poem called Dodi, which he has talked about Ashoka, King Ashoka becoming a good man, Ashoka the Great. But he asks that why did you kill so many thousands and millions of people? The river there was covered in blood. So he also asked about his grandfathers. That was starvation that he turned into a Christian. And when we condemn people because of their religion, we must think of how and what were the circumstances that forced people to give up something that is so dear. So I think this evening has been just wonderful. And I have a small request because we just started this and it is all prasanna thing. I'm just this mama behind him, the mother figure. But we just like to know how you felt about this evening, even if you tell us a line or so, it will be very, very encouraging to us so that we can continue with it. And you can also suggest later on any poets and writers who will be part of this. So we can start with Dr. Paramita. You can tell us, Kamon Laglo.
It was so enriching a program. I think the very initiative of this Poets Talk About Poets, we come to know, like Roopali Di, you again and again said that we came to know about so many things about poets which we don't know. In fact, many poets who are great, but we don't know about them. So it's a wonderful initiative, a very laudable, very appreciable initiative, firstly. And I think it started with a bang, with wonderful people speaking, like all of you. Everybody was so good, and Arindam ended it such a brilliant presentation. Very organized, very well researched, brilliant presentation. That I felt it was a wonderful evening. I enjoyed every bit. Thank you so much, Roopali Di, for being with this, and thank you so much, Prasanna. Thank you, Prasanna.
Lovely. And what about Sreedharan Parokode? Tell us how you felt about presenting such a famous, renowned Malayalam poet.
No, I am fortunate enough to be here because as Roopali Madam has rightly remarked in the last poet meet, she told that we could reach there in distant places, but failed to reach the hearts of common. She told that. I still remember that. Yeah. This is a wonderful evening, and we could see the hearts of other people and poets also, and very well. The nice evening, and with all the ornaments, the evening is very clearly visible here. And that's why I can say.
Thank you so much. And Padmavati, you were brilliant. You were just brilliant.
Thank you,
Now
ma'am.
tell us.
Yeah, even I love the program and the way it started with Paramita's presentation, then Sreedharan's and everyone's, even Arindam sir. Everybody presented so well. I appreciate every one of you. And yeah, actually, it is, to me, it is a learning session. To all of us, of course, all of us. And we ourselves, we don't know many poets of India. And whenever we listen about Rabindranath Tagore, we read a lot of things about him from the textbooks. Even still, we are very curious to know him and all. The same. It is really a great session, ma'am, and it's a great experience. Yeah. I echo
so
the
much.
words of Paramita and Mr. Sreedharan. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Prasanna, pat on your back. And what about you, Arindam? You've been reading, you brought out this this man who was, you know, who was a poet, who was lonely, who had a family, who had an adopted family. I mean, it was just so wonderful. And you know, of late, what had happened, I began to feel that we were reading a lot of poetry everywhere, but we were forgetting our poets. Somewhere we were forgetting our poets.
That's true.
So
That's true. That's true. A wonderful evening. Thank you, everyone. And Paramita, you were brilliant with your presentation. So all of you, you know, no matter how much we hear about Tagore, we hunger for more. You know, with every sip that we drink, every sip of knowledge that we have about Tagore, we grow thirstier and thirstier. You know, and it was wonderful to know about a Malayali poet and a Telugu poet. You know, we in North India, because of the language problems and other things, and so many other problems, that is not enough interaction. I think, you know, forums like this or a magazine, you know, we become a focal point where we bring thoughts and concepts together. We bring poets together, and of course, we in different groups have been running Poets to Poet, you know, for a very long time, where we have been interviewing a lot of poets, and we have interviewed almost all very prominent poets. And Urna does it for us, and she had interviewed Jayanta, which we again reposted with some updates when he passed away. So yes, it is very important. And when a poet, I felt as an editor publisher also, when a poet approaches poetry, you know, he brings a greater insight into the work of another poet, and which all of you have done here. And thank you, Roopali. Thank you, Prasanna. It has been a wonderful, lovely evening.
And Prasanna, thank you so much, because it's all your idea. And you know, you brought together so many good people, and you must have something to say, I'm sure, about your evening.
Thank you for accepting this, you know, kind of invitations. Not like the poetry recital. It's all about your learning, and it's a kind of seminar. So it's all about knowing about a regional language poet, and you know, kind of, you know, knowing about the you know, the literary influence, you know, that has created on the inspiration that he's created in the native spheres. So it's all about this. So this will go on, and this is the first of its series. So next will be on
Next one is
fortnight in 21st September. So we'll be listening more in a few more languages and from the esteemed poets. But as of now, thank you for, you know, accepting this this in a kind of invitation. And
3 cheers for you, Prasanna.
Yes, wonderful initiative. 3 cheers for you, Prasanna.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
thank
yeah.
you, Valerie. Yes.
Yeah. I appreciate you, Prasanna. I appreciate you wholeheartedly for the methodical work, organization, everything.
Very good.
And
thank you so much.
This program is telecasting live on the page Fatal Brains, so you could you know, have a you know, later on. So that is it. If you wanted to share, you could share the link. That's I posted in the comment section. Thank you, ma'am. See you on Sunday. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, all of you. Take
Good
care.
night. Good night.
Good night. Good night, everybody.
Lovely meeting all of you.
Same here.